Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie. I'm a registered dietitian and sport nutritionist, and in this channel we talk about everything about sport nutrition and how we can make the most out of how we eat and how we perform. This video is actually going to be a continuation from the last video that I posted, which is whether or not you should use something like Myfitnesspal to track your nutrition intake from a day-to-day basis. And if you've decided that something like Myfitnesspal is going to be useful or helpful for you in, like we talked about in the last video, for a very short amount of time, this video is going to tell you a little bit more about tips and tricks on how to make sure that what the information that we are actually tracking is accurate, and also how to make it a little bit easier for you to do this, because obviously tracking everything on Myfitnesspal can be very time consuming. And so hopefully this video makes it a little bit easier for you. One other really interesting thing that I found out actually this week was that the nutrition information on the labels can actually be plus or minus 20%. So therefore, 100 calories on a label might actually be 120 calories. So this is really just going to show that these numbers are not be-all, end-all numbers that we're looking to meet as a target. We can be within a little bit of a buffer zone, and that just takes the pressure off of having to be very strict with meeting these numbers. They're a rough ballpark, and it's one way for us to see where we're at with our nutrition intake. Like I said in the last video, my thoughts on Myfitnesspal or tracking your nutrition information is realistically to do it for a short amount of time. So maybe that's 2 weeks to like a month or 2 months, just so that you get a really good idea as to what your plate should look like. And after we've done that work of measuring and knowing what those portion size should look like, then from there we can actually eyeball what our portions should look like, since we've done all that work and we actually understand what our portions need to be so that we can fuel well for our sport. Here's some tips on how we can actually be a little bit more accurate with our tracking. So the first tip is actually measure food. So a lot of times people will track in Myfitnesspal, but actually won't be measuring the food that they're eating. So they won't be pulling out their measuring cups and using teaspoons, tablespoons, etc. to actually measure the food that they're eating. If you don't really understand or know what 1 cup looks like, or half a cup, or grams of meat, etc., or teaspoon or tablespoon of fats and oils, that can lead to inaccurate tracking. And so for measuring, this is going to lead us to a little bit more accuracy in terms of those numbers. When you're entering your food into Myfitnesspal, you want to make sure that you get the one with the green check mark. This means that it's verified, and the information for that is going to be more accurate than any of the other ones. The reason for that is because anyone can put information in there. So an apple with the green check mark is going to be a little bit more accurate than apple that has no check mark beside it that maybe someone else put the information in for. If you can, making sure that you have the same brand as well is going to be helpful to make sure that the information is the exact same as what your package is. You also want to be making sure and checking the nutrition information before you actually add it into your diary, because sometimes it can be quite off. And if you're looking at the nutrition information and think it's a little bit too high in terms of some of those macros that it's giving you, then you want to choose another product. One example of this is one time I was choosing gravy to put into Myfitnesspal, and it said that 1 tablespoon was 400 calories, which is totally not accurate at all. So I had to choose another one to make sure that it was more accurate. My next tip is actually to track individual food items. The reason for that is if you're going to, say for example, input that you had a piece of lasagna, the lasagna recipe that you have might be significantly different than the lasagna that somebody else is making, and therefore you want to make sure that the ingredients are the same so that you get the same energy density and the macros, because like I said, they're going to be different from food to food. Unfortunately, yes, this does mean that you're going to be doing a little bit more work in terms of adding in the pasta, the sauce, any oils that you use, the veggies that you used, any sort of meat that you used, the cheese that you used, and those individual items are going to be added up into your full meal. The last tip I have for the accuracy piece is potentially weighing your meats raw versus cooked, because this is one where the water content when you cook it is going to, the meat's going to be lighter after you cook it. So therefore, depending on how well done you cook your meat to, it could lead to a little bit less accuracy in terms of how much protein you get from that meat because the water content is changing. We want to make sure that what we put into Myfitnesspal is actually what we measured. For example, if our chicken breast is raw and it has skin on, we want to make sure that both of those things are accounted for when we put that into Myfitnesspal. If we measured it when it was cooked and it didn't have skin on it, then we want to make sure that that is what we are putting into Myfitnesspal. The same goes for the grains and cereals. So for example, making sure that when you track it, it says either that it's, dry oatmeal or cooked pasta or cooked rice, so that we aren't measuring it in the raw state and actually tracking it as the cooked state. So from those tips, it definitely is making it seem like tracking your nutrition on Myfitnesspal can be pretty tedious, and it definitely can. There are some good features on there that make it a little bit easier for you. So for example, you can scan the barcode of the product so that it will bring it up immediately. You don't even have to search for some of the items, which is really great if you are using packaged types of foods. And they also have a meal function. So for example, you can input different types of breakfasts and have that as a preset breakfast time meal, because sometimes we have the same breakfast all the time, and you can actually copy meals over to the next day as well. That's definitely an option that they've implemented in their app as well. Before, in the accuracy piece, I was talking about that it would probably be helpful to include individual food items, which definitely sounds a little bit more tedious, especially if you make a whole meal and you're only eating a very small portion of it. Myfitnesspal actually makes it pretty easy for you to create a recipe and save it, and therefore you have that for the future so that you can say, I just had one serving of lasagna. So you've already got all the ingredients from the lasagna into the recipe. It made 8 servings, you had one. It'll tell you exactly how many calories and macros are in that one serving of the lasagna, so that you know in the future that you can just continue to use that. So if you're using it for a decent amount of time, you might have all your recipes already in there and you can easily and quickly track them. The other really nice feature that they have on that recipe page is that you can actually import links to the recipes that you find online, and it actually draws in all of the ingredients for you and the amounts, and then you can just modify if you didn't use something or you switch something out, and then that way it gives you a really good estimation, and it's very quick and easy because it just draws in all of the information for you. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found it helpful and useful for you if you are going to be tracking with Myfitnesspal. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put that below. If you have any other suggestions for videos, I'm open to hearing your suggestions, and hopefully we can make this more tailored to what you guys want. So let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!